Hi everyone, it's Nadia, Jake, this is Sedona, this is Buddy, and Babu is downstairs. Today we're going to talk about Blue Beetle. We're a little late to the party, but it was still in our theater, so we decided to watch it. You weren't as excited to watch this film. I wasn't over the top excited. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like a fun film. Interested in your thoughts, because like always, we never share it before the review. Should I go first?
Yes.
Okay. I would rate it 7 out of 10. And the reason why I would rate it 7 out of 10 is because of the fact that it felt very much more entertaining than DC. So for a DC film, 7 out of 10, which is a good thing in my book right now. I really thought some parts were really corny and it was very cringy to watch. It was just some jokes that were not really landing in the best way, but I also felt like it had the amazing emotional scene in the film that really made me want to cry. I just think that there was a lot of room for improvement, to be honest with you. So really, if this was a Marvel film, I would rate it 6 out of 10, but since it's a DC, and I honestly don't like any DC movies, they're okay. I watched them and I'm like, yeah, they're fine, but then I look back at it and I'm like, yeah, it wasn't really that entertaining.
You're rating it higher because it's a DC movie?
From a DC standard, I had lower expectation.
Oh, I see.
So you know what I mean? So it surpassed my expectation because my expectation was
if Marvel
lower.
made the same movie, they'd get a lower score.
Well, Marvel has been pretty bad lately. So I think, actually, you know what? Let me redo my rating. I'll do 6 out of 10. Because Marvel was good. I really like Marvel, but then some of it, it's I'm not as interested in Marvel anymore. I'm not really sure if it's a burnout. But DC, there aren't enough good DC films, and I'm a DC fan. I grew up watching DC, not Marvel, so I really want to have movies that aren't cartoon that makes me feel nostalgic. And obviously, or not obviously, but I didn't grow up watching Blue Beetle, but I thought this one was a right step forward in that direction just because of the plot development, just because of the emotional scene. It really had a good arc. It didn't feel like it was trying to redo the same story as other DC characters. And one of the reasons why I liked it is because the main character wasn't annoying. However, his sister was very annoying. So there is that. I also felt like the love story between Jaime and Jenny, pretty solid. I it was believable. That's my non-spoiler thought. What about you?
It sucked.
Yeah, I figured. What would you rate it, first of all?
I'd give it a 3 or 4 out of 10.
Whoa, okay. I could tell because after we watched the film and then we get out of theater, he just looked so depressed. And I'm like, okay, it's going to be a low rating movie for you.
It was literally just a copy paste of other, superhero movies. It was very, very
It felt like
bland.
Marvel.
It felt like Marvel.
Yeah.
It felt like Marvel 2011, It's we've
Well, that's when I liked
seen
it.
this story a billion times, and the only difference was that it has a Latino cast, and that was cool. And there was
great,
the Mexican culture, and
I love that, yeah.
Immigrants, and all of that was interesting, and that was mostly in the first act of the movie.
Yeah.
And that was charming. There were some good moments. I like George Lopez. I mean, I think he's fun, and I like seeing him in a movie. And I thought Jaime as a character was fun. His sister was a little annoying, but I mean, it was mostly just I was watching it going yeah, this is fine. This is cute. That's, just fun. And then it just becomes superhero stuff. I mean, the first time he's in his suit, he's just become CG. We lose sight of his face, and then you just lose all personality. It just copy paste, and there were all the beats I predicted. They came right. It just made me feel miserable and just wow, that was really unoriginal and just kind of bland. And I mean, it wasn't horrible. It wasn't a catastrophe. It wasn't Thor: Love and Thunder or anything. It held together, and it was a coherent movie, but the themes were just hammered in so bluntly. It was literally it was very poorly done without any subtlety. It was just really
What subtlety? I guess we can get into that in a spoiler section, but do you feel like you're also suffering from just superhero movie burnout that
isn't?
Contributed to the rating?
Who isn't? But
because I feel like I am as well. So I tried to rate it without thinking about that, because that's not the movie's fault.
Look, I've been suffering superhero burnout since the first Avengers came out.
Okay.
The thing is, like, it's not so much superhero burnout. I'm tired of these really derivative movies that take no risks and are doing the same plot beats. The humor is bland. The characters aren't super believable. If they have any redeeming stuff, it's just drowned out by all this previs garbage that they do in the final act, you know? And it's just like, what are we doing here? And I get like DC is like they're changing their structure and everything. So it just felt like they had this movie and they had to put it out, and no one in the studios seemed to really care about it.
Obviously, you can rate it with the mindset that, you know, this is an original story, origin story that's not original at all. But it's like, that's what these types of movies are supposed to be. So like when you go into the theater, you have the expectation that it is going to be, and especially if it's a first one in the series, it is going to be an origin story. It is going to have a certain arc. There is a formula to these films. While I get what you're saying, I also don't know if it's like truly deserved in these types of films.
I think it is. I think the lack of originality ended up removing the stakes for me. It ended up, the emotional beats didn't hit for me. It was just waiting for the next thing to happen.
I think the originality for this one is that it's more of a family affair.
That's Shazam. So many of these movies are that.
It's true, but with like giving into this world, like you said, like mostly Latino cast, and it was visibility into this world of like, hey, like a little bit more diversity, you know?
Yeah, and that was the only really interesting part of the movie.
But I wonder because it is, you know, aimed at more Latin American culture, if the studio didn't want to risk anything that wasn't otherwise original from this like formula.
Why? Because they can't.
Because the studios are a little bit like racist with those, like whenever there's a diverse cast, they're like are already hesitant, and then so there's a lot of pushbacks in the way in which these movies should be created a lot of times, you know?
I have no idea.
And then so like a writer or director, they don't have as control. And especially if it's like a big universe like DC, Marvel, they have like limited control until the formula has been proven success. Like Thor, Love and Thunder, they took a big risk. It was very different and it flopped, right? Like it was very different. They tried to make something very different, but it was also similar. And
Thor, Love and Thunder was a financial success.
But not critically.
But does that matter to them?
I think so, don't you think?
Maybe slightly, but I think, you know, the fact that it made a lot of money, they're already talking about doing another Thor with Taika Waititi directing again.
All right, I stand to be corrected. So I don't know. Let's go move on to spoiler section.
All right, spoilers. 3, 2, 1.
All right. So what do you think could have been improved since you were more critical of this film than I am?
I think that they could have changed up the origin story, made it a little more unique, maybe focus more on the family, less on this.
I feel like they focus on family a lot, though, don't you think?
I thought they did, but I thought a lot of what they focused on the family was sort of cliched and just very like stereotype, like a lot of like Mexican stereotypes, honestly, that I don't know, like it just came off as like not super in depth. Like the characters weren't super engaging. Like the humor wasn't that fun. It just needed something like a new direction, some originality with like the directing style, you know, just anything to make it more lively. Like the whole final act of this movie was just CGI, you know, fight scenes and fighting in the sky, and it just felt like, oh, I'm watching it looked like a Halo cutscene. Like, what are we doing here? And then like musical action moments that are supposed to be fun that are just so bland. Like it felt like nobody gave a shit about making this movie. Like, and I'm not trying to knock like the filmmakers. I'm sure there are people who cared, but I'm talking about like the studios, the higher up. It just felt like they were churning out a product on an assembly line. So your criticism is really for the studio in a lot of ways because of the budgeting. Well, I don't know. I don't know who's to blame. You know, I think that, you know, maybe the writers had something more ambitious or whatever, or the director wanted to do more, but they couldn't. They were limited. Who knows? I have no idea. But I'm just saying the final product is just mush. It's bland, and I don't think people are going to be talking about it. I mean, they're already not talking about it. I don't think it was a hit at all.
We're talking about it.
We're talking about it. So,
well, okay. So I can't speak into the cultural aspect because I'm not Latina, so I don't want to speak into that just because I don't feel like it's my place to do so. But I will speak into like some of the stuff with the sister being annoying. I just think like it was very much like when she poops in the bathroom and then she just talks out loud, and like, when they're trying to be sneaky, it was just like you could tell obviously they were trying to like
comic relief character.
Well, they were trying to push the plot forward for a way to get like her brother fired, and it just felt like it was very much like you're pushing it. I can clearly see that you're pushing the plot forward, where I felt like it could be a little bit more not as obvious, I guess, but in these films I think they're mostly obvious, so that's just kind of like general superhero movie critique maybe. And I also felt like that was a little crazy because she puts like a gum under the chair because she says that she's trying to keep the job, but at the same time she doesn't care if they get caught, or she risks like when their family's already financially struggling. So it's just those contradicted with each other. So that's what I mean with like, obviously they're trying to put like comedy beats there, but it doesn't really go for character arc. Like, is she both trying to like keep her job by putting gum under the chair and also at the same time trying to get fired?
Was she putting gum? I think she was scraping gum off of the chair.
Yeah, but then she put an extra gum in there.
Oh, she did.
And then her brother was like, "What are you doing?" It's like, "I'm trying to keep her job," because like if you scrape all the gums out, she was afraid that they were gonna like probably not need them anymore.
Oh, I see.
And then like as seen before, we learned that they're gonna lose their house.
Yeah.
So they're all trying to like kind of get resources together, right, in a communal way.
All of the stuff with the house, the real stuff, like the money, the dad having a heart attack early in the, it's like that's really engaging. It's like, oh, we have these stakes. We're worried about this stuff.
But then the way they go about those stakes is like not. I felt like was poorly executed.
Yeah, and like
except for the dad dying.
No.
I thought the dad dying was amazing. Not like him dying, but
wow,
like I thought
die, motherfucker. I thought that
the way that it was executed.
No, I saw that coming a million. Like the first minute he was on screen, I went, "Oh, he's gonna die," because they hint at the heart attack, and then he's like really nice and supports his son, and I'm like, "Oh, he's gonna die."
And he's also like the emotional. He's the emotional
heart of the movie.
Heart of the film. Yeah.
Here's something I really hated about the climax of the movie. So this is actually really similar to Black Adam. Black Adam had this problem because in the final act of that movie, he's captured and like in some chamber, and he's stuck there, and then he like internally, or they break him out or something, whatever. But for a big part of that, he's not even in the movie, and some other people are doing the fighting. In this movie, it was the same thing. He's captured, and his family is doing the fighting, and we just don't care as much. Like we like the family, they're fun, but they're supporting characters, and he's just there, and then he has this vision where he sees his dead dad, and it's like, okay, this is going to be the thing that that flips the movie, and he's going to be a hero. Blah, 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 whatever. It's Uncle Ben. We've seen it before. But then have this moment where he's like in space, and then he sees Blue Beetle, like him as a giant in a costume, and it's supposed to be this like emotional thing. And like we're cross-cutting with the action, and it's like he's needed, like they really need him to fight because they're losing or whatever. And it keeps cross-cutting with him floating towards the Blue Beetle with his finger pointed out. And then they touch fingers like that painting, like God and Jesus or whatever. And
I thought that was bad.
And it was like, all right, so this is what is I hate it when the stakes in a scene are like something that are totally kind of like dreamlike or arbitrary, and something that a character that's like, it's clearly the writers are going, we need this to last this amount of time. We need him to have this cathartic dream spiritual moment at exactly this time so that it fits with our climax. And it just feels very forced and I didn't think it worked at all. It was just like, all right, we get what you're doing.
I have more of a criticism of when they're touching and it keeps lingering and it loses the moment. Right before that I thought was fine. But when it was like,
it was corny as fuck.
It just lasted a little bit too long. They overplayed it.
Yeah.
And then also like when the guy who's like helping transfer all the data over then suddenly has a change of heart, it's like very off character because you can see he's hesitant throughout the whole thing.
I liked when he died.
Why didn't you just like, yeah, that was funny. But why didn't you just like stop from it downloading to the other one? It's like, okay, I'm going to make sure everything's downloaded. Then I'm going to change the heart.
Because the writers wanted it to be that way. Like, that's the thing.
What I mean with like very obvious.
It's poor writing. It's just, they're just like, we need this to happen, so we're going to have it happen here. So.
Yeah, and I felt like it was a little clumsy. Also, that could be fixed very like simply by like an editor.
Well, not to mention also at the very end, the like bad guy, then suddenly the suit is like, I downloaded his memories. Here's memories of him as a child suffering. And it's like, this like mute character who's just like this dumb villain is suddenly like humanized and turns against the person all of a sudden. It's just like incredibly forced. And it was like, really? Are we really seeing Vlad? Like it felt incredibly cheesy. And that's the thing. I thought all of the emotional moments, they were trying to be sincere, but they were so forced. And it was like literally spelling out the words. Like I thought it was so funny when the bad guy tells him earlier in the movie, your family is your weakness. And it's like...
But then he has a family, like, locket, doesn't he, or something?
Yeah, but it's like, what do you even know? Like, does he
that?
even know that much about his family? Like, he's just fighting this kid. Like what is, like, your family is your weakness? It's like, okay, is this the theme of the movie? And then later he's like, I told you your family is your weakness. He's like, no, my family is my strength. And it's like, really? Wow,
that's
that
exactly
was really
point.
Cleverly phrased. That was what a wonderful way to communicate the themes of this film. Come on. Can we be any more creative with this?
Yeah, I totally get that. I did feel that way too. And then like while he says family is a weakness, that he carries a locket, I thought like he lost his family because he like thought so much about his family and then he couldn't like save them, and then maybe like because he cared about his family he couldn't say. I don't know. I thought something else. I didn't know that he barely like he had a child drop. I thought the back scene was fine. It was just like, I don't know. You know, I get your point. I guess like I didn't mind it as much maybe. I would say that like the parts that I really liked about it, or no, one more thing I didn't like about it. Maybe I should change my rating from 6 to 5. But like, I hated how the green suit, first of all, in that scenario, that was cheesy. Like, why is a person...
You mean the Blue Beetle?
The Blue Beetle, sorry. The Blue Beetle. Like, why are they in a costume? Like, I wanted them to... It's an alien technology. I wanted them to actually be an alien instead of a person in a costume. Like, you know, that sounded... Like, why couldn't it be a beetle?
A beetle,
or a beetle like human kind of looking, you know, alien. Like I just thought like a person in a costume was a little weird.
Yeah.
To touch, because it's like, I'm in a costume, touch me, I don't know my face. You know, it was kind of dumb. Also thought it was cheesy when he goes at the first, like, I'm not a killer. At the end goes, no, you're not a killer. Like the Blue Beetle does. I thought that was kind of weird, cheesy thing for the connection. We obviously know they're connected by the touch. We don't need that. Really didn't like when he becomes the Blue Beetle in the beginning. And then he, like, it looks like a simulation of, like, testing, which is what it was. Even though it's supposed to be an alien technology, it felt like it was very robotic rather than like an alien technology.
No, and it had a human voice. Like it came across as like human tech. Like
it came across like Iron Man a little bit.
You know, literally like that whole scene when he first has the suit on. It's like Iron Man like flying around. He has no control of it.
And it would make sense if it was a human technology like Iron Man, but like because it's an alien technology, and that's why they sometimes have a hard time like replicating. This is a Blue Beetle, and they do aim to like move it later forward, like move it so that there's an army of people wearing that, like, or having that in their system. It is nonetheless an alien technology, so to have a voice that mimics a robot was a little bit kind of that's my biggest criticism. Things contradict itself. What are you really aiming at? Is it an alien technology? Is it a human technology? Are you trying to save the house by keeping your job, or are you trying to get fired? Like, there's a lot of things at stake. They sometimes go towards it and then they kind of back away with just to fulfill comedic beats. So I'll change my rating to 5 out of 10.
Ooh.
Nonetheless, I still recommend you watch it. I think it is a breakthrough movie in the fact that like there is a Latino cast, which is different, and I do want to support that. So and you might have a different opinion. You know, Jake brainwashes me into lowering rating by listening to his. You know, so anyway,
good opinion.
All right. Tell us what you think, and let us know if there's anything else you think we should watch.
Yes.
And until then, we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for watching, everyone. Bye.
Bye.